The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is October 27, 2024, and today we're going to continue basically looking at the situation within Ukraine. So, without any further ado, let's start. First of all, we're going to talk about the situation in the Zaporozhye Oblast, or Zaporozhye. The Russians have made some small gains north of Robotyne, basically like increasing the buffer zone to ensure not only that Robotyne is secured from any like future Ukrainian counterattacks, but also to like plant the seeds for a future offensive on the town of Orkiv, or Orkov, as they say in Russian. And to the east, the Russians have gained more land north and west of Livadine, but have not made any further moves so far, though what I think the Russians are going to do now is go for the village of Novodorivka and perhaps Rivinopil in the Donetsk Oblast, and maybe Novopil too, which is near the border with Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Now, in the Velika Novosilka direction / Ugledar direction, the Russians have made some massive gains in recent days. So, as all of you guys know, Ugledar fell earlier this month, basically like October 1st, 2024. And at first, nothing really much happened afterwards, but now we are seeing the side effects that the fall of Ugledar brings to the central southern Donetsk province. So, first of all, the village of Boho-Yavlinka has mostly, if not already fallen to Russia by now. Literally, like 70 to like 80% of it is now under Russian control, and Suryak has this part in a gray zone, which means it's likely under Russian control at this point, so I guess you can say that it has already been captured by Russia. Novoukrenka, the Russians have captured basically half of it already by now, at like 40 or for like 45% of it. But it's probably going to fall by tomorrow or the day after that. And then you have also the town of Shakhartsky right here. I'm expecting the Russians to quickly take this as well, and it will pretty much make an offensive on Velika Novosilka more and more likely. So, with these big gains here, north of Ugledar, the Russians will be able to put in danger the town of Korakove. And speaking of which, the Russians have taken the village of Katarinivka, and they are also advancing on the village of Yelizavtivka. I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce it correctly, but Yelizavtivka is going to probably come under Russian control in the next few days too. And then once these two villages here fall, basically everything that's, like, I guess acting like as a buffer or defense for Korakove is going to collapse easily, and then the Russians will simply flank Korakove from the south and from the east. And speaking of Korakove, the Russians have already entered the town's administrative borders. They have taken control over a couple blocks here of private residential areas, and they're even in the suburbs post Maximilianivka. And as all of you know by now, Korakove's city officials have already fled the town for, I guess, maybe either Dnipropetrovsk or maybe for the city of Pokrovsk, Myonograd. But it's likely they're not even in Donetsk Oblast anymore. I think they're in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. It's very likely they are. So yeah, the Russians have already entered Korakove from the northeast, but they're like separated by like the Volcha River here, and because of that, some people don't really think it counts. But again, any part of Korakove that's under Russian control is under Russian control, no matter how small it is. Now, to the north, even more bad news for Korakove. The city of, or the town of GIRNYK, or GIRNYK, depending on what you call it as. I say GIRNYK, which is like a mix of its Russian and Ukrainian name, but anyway, so GIRNYK has fallen to Russia as well. And this is bad because now the Ukrainians that are in Kharkivka are going to have to flee. they will literally have no choice but to leave. There's going to be little to no fighting here. They're going to literally withdraw from the town. And I don't think they're even going to stay here, too. They're all going to flee westwards towards either Andriivka or towards Pokrovsk, which is where I'm expecting the big battle to be. Like, the next big battle of the Russo-Ukrainian War. It's going to be very decisive, if you ask me, in regards to the fate of Donetsk Oblast. Now, from Sukurno, the Russians have taken full control of the town and are advancing on the villages of Kremina Bolka and Novodimitrivka. The Russians are also advancing in the village of Novoselidivka and have a control over a good chunk of it already, though not a majority of it, but they are advancing in this area here, and as soon as they're able to get under control of Novoselidivka, then basically northern Kharkov is already cooked. Like, the Ukrainians cannot literally stick there for much longer. They're eventually going to have to leave. They'll have to. Now, as all of you know, GIRNYK has fallen, but another certain town has fallen. In fact, it's quite a big one. SELIDOVO, or should I say, I kind of messed up the pronunciation or the translation. But today, SELIDOVO is no longer that. Today, it is SELIDOVO again. SELIDOVO, whatever. I'll call it SELIDOVO. But yeah, so SELIDOVO is no longer SELIDOVO, it's SELIDOVO again. The Russians have taken control of arguably the final piece of the Pokrovsk puzzle, other than, I guess, Mirnograd. But here's the thing. When the Russians began the offensive towards Pokrovsk, they had a lot of pieces to go through. They needed not just Avdiivka, but they needed Pervomaisky. They needed Ocheretine. They needed Progress. They needed Zhaleny. They needed Novogradivka, Hrudivka, and SELIDOVO. And now they also have Ukrainsk, GIRNYK, and soon to be Kharkivka. So with the taking of SELIDOVO from the armed forces of Ukraine, the Russians now basically have a springboard. They now have a golden opportunity to storm the city of Pokrovsk from the eastern side. But if I have to predict what's going to happen this winter, or should I say the remainder of fall and winter, the Russians are not going to go into Pokrovsk that quickly. In fact, it would be suicide. Instead, what I think will happen is, and quote me on this, all right? After the Russians deal with all of this in the south, the Russians are going to advance on Pokrovsk, like, from this direction. Like, after they take Kharkov, they're going to advance towards Andriivka, and from Andriivka, they will then advance towards Pokrovsk and towards the other freeways that go into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. In this fashion, they will be able to cut off Pokrovsk from, like, the south, from the west, and perhaps, yes, the east. And the only way they'll be able to supply Pokrovsk is from the north. So yeah, the Russians are not going to go for Pokrovsk directly just yet. They're going to try to, like, turn it into a cauldron like they did with SELIDOVO, like they did with GIRNYK, like they did with Novogradivka, with Hrudivka, or should I say Grudivka, sorry. And right now with Kharkov and, yes, Ugledar. They are going to repeat this cycle again, and again with every single major urban center in eastern Ukraine, until the Ukrainians simply can't fight anymore. So the Donbas is looking really bad for the Ukrainians. Really bad. But on the plus side, at least they counterattacked in southern Toretsk and have retaken control over this whole neighborhood here. But here's the problem. Now, even though the Ukrainians had successfully counterattacked and retaken southern Toretsk, the problem with this, though, is that the Ukrainians are being encircled from the west. And as soon as the Russians take these two villages here, the Ukrainians will have next to no way out from southern Toretsk. They're going to have to give it up again. and this time it will probably be for good. So if the Russians take control over the villages Perchivka and Sherbanivka, the battle for Toretsk is already, like, decided. Now, even though the Russians have already taken control over, like, most parts of, like, the strategic parts of Toretsk, the battle still has, like, at least 1 to 2 months left before it concludes. Same with Chazov Yar, by the way, but I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, so Toretsk at the moment, it's still kind of like in limbo, though I will say, for the Russians, the loss of the southern Toretsk neighborhoods is quite a setback, though in the long term, they're going to get it back, like, easily. The area is being encircled, and there's just no way for the Ukrainians to hold on to it long term. In fact, them counterattacking in this area is a massive error on their end, and they're only delaying the inevitable. So yeah. Now, going to Chazov Yar, the Russians, there hasn't really been a lot of stuff going on since, like, the previous video, but yes, Russians are continuing to advance from the eastern direction. They have taken control over basically 40% of Chazov Yar, which includes these two neighborhoods here, and of course the Microcanal district. But you may also want to keep an eye out on what happens from the southern direction too. Now, the way I see it, and as I told a lot of people, and I think I may have said it in my last video, the Russians need to take Toretsk first before they seize all of Chazov Yar. Without Toretsk, Chazov Yar is not going to be taken. At least as easily. Like, I think they want to flank it and turn it into a cauldron, like they did with the other towns that they've taken so far in central southern Donetsk Oblast. But yeah, until then, Chazov Yar will continue to remain the way it is. Unless they're doing another media blackout, in which we don't know shit for like weeks or so until, I guess, the very last possible moment when they announce the Russian gains. So yeah. Nothing going on in Seversk direction, so not really worth my time. The Russians are advancing in the direction of, surprisingly, Liman again. They have taken control over, I guess, some parts of the town or village of Torsky, but I wouldn't really pay too much attention to it yet because there hasn't really been a lot of confirmations. Though I will say, you may want to keep an eye out on this area here because the Russians are advancing north from Nevelsky in Makivka, and they have entered Donetsk Oblast from the north. And the Zarabits River, which separates these two banks here, the Russians are about to basically take this side of the river, while the Ukrainians will have to evacuate to this side. Terny and Polivka, are likely going to come under Russian control later, probably right before the end of 2024. So probably November or December 2024. So yeah, the Russians had a lot of issues in this direction, but now that they have mostly, like, besieged it from the north and east, or, like, half encircled it, I don't think they're going to have that many issues taking Terny and Polivka. They shouldn't. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians have reportedly seized some control over the town of, or the village of hold on, I'm trying to pronounce it here. Pershotravinive. I probably got this one wrong. But, yeah, the Russians have taken, reportedly, control of this village here and have raised a flag over it. I'll try to pronounce it again just, like, one more time before I have to move on to the other settlements. Pershotravinive. Or Privinive. I don't know. I'm not good. I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian. The Russians have gained more momentum in the village of Kulakivka and have also entered the village of Kolesnikivka and are even trying to enter the village of Hlushkivka. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I heard there were some advances like near Stopova, Novoselivka, but I haven't gotten any confirmations of such advances. But yeah, that will do it for the Kharkiv or Kharkov Oblast in eastern Ukraine. Nothing going on in the bordering areas north of Kharkiv itself. Now, as for the Kursk direction, Ukraine fanboys have been hyping up this whole area as of late because of some counterattack, I think. But truth be told, nobody really cares, and in the long run, it's not going to really matter anyway. Because for one, these operations are only to delay the inevitable and to get the guys from this area to evacuate. And also the fact is, the Russians are not really in a rush to retake everything in the Kursk Oblast. I mean, the Russians still have like stable control over the whole like province, even the areas where the Ukrainians do control, like fire control, that is, over the areas. So the Russians have reportedly started advancing from this direction, though they're taking it slow. So I'm not really expecting anything too fast at this time. And again, the rumors of the great entry of North Korean troops is still ongoing, and even a couple or so days ago, the Ukrainians, especially Zelensky and Budanov, claimed that the North Koreans are here, but there's no evidence of that, and I honestly think they're lying just to garner sympathy from the West and to get more weapons and money from them so they could just ration it only to guys that they actually like, because Ukraine is so corrupt. And there's pretty much no evidence of North Korean troops. And last but not least, before I go, I'm going to mention the BRIC summit. It'll be quick, but yeah, the Russians held this massive summit of like 30 plus countries, and in the city of Kazan, which is like the capital of Tatarstan, which is like a mostly like, I think it's populated by majority Muslim population, like Sunni Muslims. And the summit, as far as I know, was a huge success. There were no incidents by Ukrainian drones, Ukrainian fighter jets, or Ukrainian militants or whatsoever. The BRIC summit in Kazan was a massive success. They have not talked about like expanding like their like membership, like their coalition, but as far as I know, they had partnered up with I guess like 10 plus or so more countries. And even like people who are like sort of like considered enemies with each other were there, including Armenia and Azerbaijan. Oh, and I forgot. This is the last thing I'll mention before I go. So there have been a lot of elections lately going on in Eastern Europe, and especially in the frontier of Asia, especially in the North Caucasus. So Georgia recently just had a huge election here. It was between the neutral or alleged pro-Russia party, Georgian Dream, versus the pro-Western like opposition. Now, the city of Tbilisi, which is the capital of Georgia, they all voted for the pro-Western parties, as you can imagine. But the Georgian Dream Party, however, has won majority of the provinces in Georgia. Now, what this vote means, okay, is that the people of Georgia don't want to fight Russia. Now, they don't like Russia, but they also don't want to fight them because they know what the Ukrainians are going through. And yeah, the Russians haven't really taken over Ukraine yet, but still, they don't want their sons and daughters to go fight a war. If anything, they want to keep the status quo in place and to keep the trade relations with Russia alive. Now, the Prime Minister of Georgia himself, who is the exact same age as Zelensky, he said that Georgia is not looking to reestablish diplomatic relations with Georgia at this time, but he also said nothing about, like, NATO or, like, European membership or something like that. He hasn't. I think he's smarter than that, and he understands that Georgia cannot fight another war with Russia. It just can't afford it. They don't really have a lot of people there. It's very small when compared to Ukraine. And also, Moldova had an election too. Apparently, their presidential election is going to a runoff, and I think the pro-Russian candidate may have the edge. But then again, the referendum when it comes to like EU membership and like their constitution, like the discussion of EU membership, barely won by like 1 point, leading to the belief that there was maybe voter fraud or something. You just never know with these ex-Soviet countries. There's a lot of corruption here. But there was a referendum here. It barely squeaked by 1 point, and there's going to be a runoff in this election, which I think Sandu will have a very difficult time in winning. I don't know about what's going on in Bulgaria. They're having an election too. Japan also had an election today, and I think the ruling government lost. So, yeah, the liberal opposition is taking power, or at least is going to neuter the LDP's ability to govern Japan. So they'll get like more of a same power. Now, again, as a bonus, I'm sorry if I said bonus way too many times. I would like to call out this individual by the name of Ukraine Matters. He's not even Ukrainian. He is like some guy living in like Denmark or something, like in the Nordic countries, sitting comfortably at home watching Russians and Ukrainians kill each other. This guy has the audacity to use one of the most biased maps in all of the war in Ukraine. He's like literally sugarcoating like the losses of the Ukrainians in Donetsk Oblast. He say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Look at this. Russians have not gained a lot of territory. They have not. There's nothing to panic about. Pokrovsk is fine. Dnipropetrovsk does not need any defending. Everything is fine. Russia is losing. Slava Ukraini. Seriously, folks. What the hell is wrong with this man? What the hell is wrong with this grifter? At least Denny's have some integrity than this guy. He's not even Ukrainian. He's literally LARPing. At least I'm honest about what I am. I'm just an American sitting comfortably at home, thousands of miles away, across the sea, just rambling about the war in Ukraine. Well, this guy is lying straight to your face about what's going on over there. And he doesn't care if he's lying. He wants to make money. That's what all these YouTubers do. Him, Denny's, reporting from Ukraine, Jake Bro, Anna from Ukraine, all of them. They all want to make money. They don't care if Ukraine wins or loses. They all want to make money. It's disgusting, and I find it extremely cringe that NAFO keeps falling for these obvious grifters and scammers. It's just awful. So yeah, folks, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. So tell me in the comment section below what you think of the recent news in Ukraine. And also, tell me about what you think is going to happen in the 2024 presidential elections. Because, as you can imagine, I'm going to go vote next week. It's a big day. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to wake up very early in the morning. You literally cannot understand just how excited I am about this election. I'm really looking forward to the shit show that's going to be unfolding very soon in the United States. Like, I assure you guys, it's going to be fun to watch. I'm going to do a live stream, have people from the Defense Politics Asia Discord chime in. It's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, I hope all of you guys have a great night and stay safe. Peace out. Bye.